Welcome and welcome back, everybody. Tia here, and in today's video,
show us your games!
Here is our main gaming space. So we have a chalkboard over here for friends to sign. We also have our shelf of shame games, singular, listed. And over here, we have a mini fridge complete with very fancy chilled glasses. And our little playmat storage area. As you can see, we've really maxed out the wall space here as much as possible, including some of the window space. And in the main center of the room, obviously, we have our board game table. Speaking of games, let's go ahead and take a look at our first shelf. To start things off, we're gonna start on this side over here with some games you guys probably haven't seen in the backdrop in previous videos. This is my partner Duke's 5x5 Calyx that houses a main portion of his collection, 4 and 5 player games. Now you will be seeing some games on here that do look familiar from my shelf. We do have some games that we've double purchased, whether we owned them before we started dating or have purchased them after the fact. I might be a little bit more guilty of that than he is, but it's just there's just some games that you need in your collection. Points to anybody who can name all the double purchases in the comments below. But on this shelf there are also some games that I really enjoy playing. So some of my personal favorites, we have Role Player up here with the Monsters and Minions and Fiends and Familiars expansion. I'm also a huge fan of Coimbra and Great Western Trail, and in addition to that, I really do enjoy Carpe Diem. I was going to purchase the new box that's very beautiful, but they didn't update the inside of the box as well, so we're leaving that one on Duke's shelf for now. Moving right along, we have another section of Duke's games here, a lot of roll and writes and 4 to 5 player games. In addition to this main bookshelf, there's also this Gnetby shelf right over here. These I've actually been looking for multiple years, and we recently just found some used online. They are discontinued, but they're really great for holding small card games and different things like that. Because they are media shelves, they're not as deep, but you can really get some nice vertical space, and it ended up being more space than we thought. So if you see any gaps in our shelves, then it would be due to getting some new shelves. And we also just did a really big cull as well of games, so that's always a difficult thing to do, but it has to be done. And we try to cull our games usually about once, sometimes twice a year, depending on how many games we're bringing in as well. Here is where our collection starts to blend a little bit more or less. These games over here are Duke's. These games on this side are mostly mine, and we kind of separated them out by mechanic as well as player count. So over here I have all of my cooperative games, and these are games that are fully cooperative, meaning there are no hidden traitors or anything like that. And over on Duke's side, he has some of his cooperative games as well, sprinkled in with some 2-player games, and then the other portion of his 4 to 5 player collection. The reason why I always pull my cooperative games out of the rest of my collection is because I find that when I'm having guests over for game night, sometimes people are in a mood to be cooperative or they want to play some competitive games. There are also many people that I've run into that are very strongly opinionated one way or the other about cooperative games. So if it's someone new to gaming who's really looking forward to a more cooperative experience where we're working together, where they don't have to memorize all the rules for themselves, then I can point them to this shelf. Or if there are people who are like, no, I hate cooperative games, then I can steer them clear of anywhere here. And of course, on my purely cooperative shelf are most of my solo play games, some of the great ones that I really enjoy playing by myself. And you probably see a few familiar faces from my top 10 solo video, my top 10 solo flexible video, have all of my games kind of scattered in everywhere else. So these are mostly our cooperative shelves in the middle here. Over here in this corner, we have our party game shelf. These are all games that support up to 7 or more players. So I have quite a few roll and writes up on this shelf, some of the all-time favorites. We also have a lot of social deduction games, racing games, word games, and things like that. Obviously, you can see like Duke's racing games and what have you. In recent times, we haven't gotten to use quite as much, unfortunately, but fingers crossed that things will take a turn for the better and we'll be able to utilize some of these games more again in the future. Over on these shelves, we have another blended type situation. So there are two things kind of going on here. Number one is that these top two shelves are my dexterity and speed game collection. Now, obviously there's some overlap between cooperative games, so some of those are on the cooperative shelf, some of them are on the dexterity and speed shelf. It is what it is. If anybody has some suggestions on how to prioritize those, let me know. I find that this is another category of games that, although I really enjoy them, I know not necessarily everybody does, so I can either point people in this direction or steer clear, or, you know, based on their day. If we're feeling kind of sleepy and we want to fill our game, but we don't want to have to scramble as fast as we can to make bubble tea, I can point them to a different shelf or away from this one. And then down here we have our up to 6-player games. So I have quite a few over here. Again, a lot of different ruling rights, since those, a popular number for those tends to be 6 if it's not infinite. And then Duke has his here as well with some chunkier titles. Again, you'll notice that there are some duplicates here, but you know, we'll talk about that later. Another thing I wanted to point out was above all of our shelves, we actually have, they're not more games, so don't worry, we're not like a hoarding situation. I mean, some people will probably look at this and think we have a hoarding situation, but these are actually empty game boxes. I just like filling the space so that it's not flat all the way across. I think just breaking up kind of that skyline, if you will, makes it visually more interesting. And obviously with board game art these days, there's so much amazing art that's being utilized in the board game world, especially with expansion boxes. I have a hard time throwing those away, so I thought it would be a great way to just kind of display them, give it a bit more character and what have you. So these are our dexterity and speed games, and some of mine and some of Duke's 6-player games. And here we are with the main bulk of my collection. These shelves behind me will look very familiar if you've been here on the channel before. So starting over on this side, I have my games that play up to 5 players with the little Gennady shelf. And as I said, we did just cull a lot of games out of our collection as well. I want to say about 50 or so games. So a quick tip for you out there who like keeping your shelves look stocked and full. One thing you can do with these boxes that are more of a rectangular shape as opposed to the square 12 by 12, when you have a lot of space on your shelves, you can obviously just put them on the long edge and they stack really nicely. You can also do this and lay them flat if you would like to. When you're ready to insert some new games, sometimes you can fit one on top, but then you can just take like a big chunk of them and turn them on their side. So that's one of the things that I always try to do, and it's, you know, probably common sense. You might already know that, but anytime we buy new games or get rid of games, people are always like, oh my gosh, like where are the new games? The shelves are so full. How are you gonna fit new ones in there? Or vice versa. Wow, you guys just sold all these games. Why does it look like nothing has changed? So that's just like a little behind the scenes on how I like to keep my shelves looking just really as aesthetic as possible. So like I said, over here are the up to 5-player games. These main shelves here in the center are my up to 4-player games. And I actually just added this 1x3 cube shelf up here on top recently as well, to make some more space. And as you can probably tell from the 360, we're running out of room a little bit horizontally. We may or may not have already covered up, or in parts covered up, half of all of the windows down here in our game room. So finding ways to just build upward vertically was really important, and these like 1x3 shelves were really great. We may have to swap out some of these expansion boxes up here at the top, as gorgeous as they are, for shelf space, depending on what things look like here in the next year or two. This main shelf here, as you can see, has quite a bit of bowing. Of all the shelves, this is the one that structurally it's definitely not made for board gaming. But this was actually the first shelf that I had back in my old apartment when I first got into board gaming. So it's near and dear to my heart. It was my first ever board game shelf, which I'll try to insert a picture here. And obviously from then to now, we've come a really long way. With my 4-player games, Originally, I did set out to kind of color coordinate them. As you can probably see, these top 3 shelves here are all 4-player games as well, with like whites and blues and some greens, and then getting into some more earthy tones and blues and purples at the bottom and blacks. But obviously, the priority is getting the games on the shelf at this point. Maybe someday, if we get like a really large game room type of setup, then that could be more of a possibility. And on this last shelf over here, like I said, these are up to 4-player games, and then at the bottom I have all of my 2-player games. Those I tend to just keep a little bit less out of the prominent visible area, because if I'm playing 2-player board games with someone, again, they're all in one spot, easy to direct someone to them. Or I'm typically playing with my partner Duke, or a friend who's really into board gaming, so they usually already have an idea of what they want to play and we don't have to spend too much time looking. So this is the main, like I said, wall of games that you've probably seen at least this section of. Here's the whole thing. And speaking of, if you've seen the shelf before, if you've been here on the channel, I just want to say a huge thank you for all of the amazing support. It's been a really awesome journey getting to 1,000 subscribers. When I set out this past April in trying to record and film games, my mind was just like, man, there are so many games that are amazing that I want to get out there. The biggest bonus from all of that is obviously getting to share games with you guys, but all the positive feedback, all of the support, all the game suggestions, just all of the fun back and forth that we've had here. It's just been really great getting to know all of you and being able to share in this wonderful hobby. So a huge thank you from me to you. If you haven't subscribed yet, feel free to do so down below. You can also click the like button if you enjoyed this video. That is our game room tour for 2021. See you next time. Bye. Obligatory, oversized Kickstarter. I love Dark Souls, what can I say?